This is the podcast of ENCATC, the European Network on Cultural Management and Policy. In this series, we interview extraordinary professionals from the cultural management and policy community. Join us to hear their stories, the secrets of their success, and their advice for creating innovation by inspiring new policies and practices in the cultural, education, and research sector.
Welcome to the ENCATC podcast channel, a space where we meet to talk and reflect about cultural management and policy education and practice. My name is Gianellia Cogliandro-Beyens, and today I'd like to invite you to listen to this special podcast series devoted to the ENCATC Congress, a major event organized in Helsinki from the 11th to the 13th of October 2023. At this occasion, our global community converged to explore the theme of artificial intelligence, a theme that is not just relevant but also profoundly transformative for the cultural and creative sectors. In these 5 episodes recorded at the occasion of our Congress, expect to hear the voice of leading experts and truly visionary people who are not just embracing the future, they are all actively shaping it through their practice and policies. They will talk about the impact of artificial intelligence on artistic expression, the evolution of policy and cultural institutions in the digital age, the change to be done in terms of leadership in an artificial intelligence context, and much more. I truly hope that this podcast will give you a new perspective and ideas to start introducing the artificial intelligence in your cultural organization, in your teaching practice, or in the shaping of new policies for the cultural sector. This recording is also the occasion to listen to Professor Gerald Lidstone, ENCATC President, who has opened the Congress. He gave us his view on how artificial intelligence is impacting our cultural management and policy community and how it is important to start embracing the change that is bringing to us with no further delay. Thank you for listening.
I'm just going to start with something very simple. A robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey orders given it by humans, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. That was written in 1942 by Isaac Asimov, and the intention was that as we were fearing future with robots, that we would create laws that would make the use of robots ethical, possibly non-military. There were a whole load of ideologies around the robot, and we were very frightened of this sort of loss of human control. Subsequently, Harry Harrison wrote a story entitled The Fourth Law of Robotics. This fourth law states the robot must reproduce as long as such reproduction does not interfere with the first, second, or third laws. At the time, we assumed for robots we could construct laws. For AI, essentially a learning entity, the laws cannot be written, and they will probably be rewritten by those who control AI, and that may well not be human. We may be developing into the post-human. So we've been here before, and what was interesting was that at that time, some people feared everything to do with robotics, and others embraced it, so that you can now do surgery where the surgeon is in California and the patient is in London. In other words, there are phenomenal advantages to robotics. It was just a question of finding out how they worked and what they were. Creative industries rely, not surprisingly, on creativity, and this can come from new ways of thinking. It can be from an arts approach or science. Often both of these are not oppositional disciplines, but both are creative in their own right. What we're going to be looking at now with AI is something that is both science and arts and culture at the same time. Now, I expect the majority of you all have opinions on the arts and cultural side of AI, but very few of you will understand the science of AI. And I think that's an area that we, as creative artists and people in creative industries, need to really adopt, find out about, and develop with. The last thing I can repair is a bicycle, pretty much. And in terms of renewal, yes, it's a hands-on thing. However, everything after that, which is an awful lot of technology, whether it's my computer, whether it's a car, impossible. I no longer have that direct relationship of working with it. And I think what's interesting is with AI from the beginning, we may understand how we want to develop the ethics and the direction of it. We may not understand how it works. And we're going to get some definitions from people over the next couple of days. All that I know is that their definition will be not appropriate within a year, maybe less. It's moving so fast that Pandora's box is clearly open, but we have no real control of it. Just as we have at the moment no real control over robotics. So this is an area to either be celebrated or feared. And because we have the title where we're going to look at embracing this area, that means hopefully we're going to be looking at its creative potential as much as its dangers. Depending on your background, whether it's arts or science, you'll have different opinions on that. And whether you are actually coming into contact on a daily basis with AI. I work in a university, and the point being, our students are already very capable of using AI in their essays and dissertations. They also can use AI in a different language and then translate it into English, and there is very little way of tracking that back. So we're already there in a particular way, and we have to think about how we move forward with that. But the one thing we do know is we can't turn the clock back. It's not going to undo AI. All it's going to do is increase its potential. And for those of you who are old enough can remember being told that computers would double their capacity every year. With AI, it can be in weeks, not years. It's moving that fast. And therefore, I think it's really, really useful that we have this debate and discussion, which hopefully you'll all be part of, to pull apart some of the key issues and some of the key ways forward. Whether we embrace something with fear or whether we embrace it with an open mind is up to you, but we don't have a choice. We have to move forward, and it will move us forward.
Now it's the time to Leonardo. Leonardo is a Colombian living in Helsinki, speaking Italian, but also knowing a lot about artificial intelligence. So he will present us this fascinating world.
Thanks to the organizers for inviting me to give this talk. It's quite a challenging topic, but I have been listening to you, and now I'm aware that you are really interested in this topic. My name is Leonardo Espinosa Leal. As Jenna said, I've been living in Finland for 10 years, and I'm a principal lecturer in technology at Arkada University of Applied Sciences. So the title of the talk is a definition of artificial intelligence. I mean, it's a very ambitious title, even because we haven't really found a well-defined what is artificial intelligence, but let's ask the famous chat GPT, what is artificial intelligence? And then I got this definition. Well, it's a branch of computer science that focuses on creating computer systems and software programs that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. Not that we are going to define what is intelligence anyway, but anyway, these tasks include problem solving, learning from experience, reasoning, natural language understanding, perception, and the ability to interact with the environment. So now that we know, or we have a quite definition of AI, I would like to say thanks for your attention, and if you have any questions, comments, you can ask ChatGPT. Well, I'm kidding, of course. I still have some minutes left. So I would like to give a kind of a historical perspective. I mean, the idea of AI always has been embodied for some reason. Like we always, or humanity always think an artificial being, like being, or have like a physical body, from the famous automatons, Festus, or the golem, the rabbi in Prague, creating this artificial being to protect the Jewish community. And then Mary Shelley with the Frankenstein. And then a little bit later and more tangible, we have Charles Babbage, Ada Lovelace, and the famous analytical engine and all the concepts that about programs, etc. But if you check a little bit the internet, you will find that this idea of creating intelligent beings have been around in all historical and cultures. If you check the ancient Chinese, Indian texts, you will find similar concepts about embodied artificial intelligence beings. But if we would like to move a little bit more to the 20th century and more digital content, maybe some of you recognize those images. We have the famous Metropolis movie by Fritz Lang, where we have the first embodied robot that living in this unequal society, it just want to create a revolution. Some of you have probably seen the movie, and we have a Space Odyssey. Space Odyssey, and this is I would like to make HAL. It's a very famous character related with AI, but it's not an embodied AI. It's just a computer that we never seen embodied. And just as a curiosity, you know that IBM, the famous company, got his name from HAL, the computer. They just took the letter after H, after A, and after L, so IBM. That's the origin of the name of the company. And then I wanted to show this Small Wonder TV series. I don't know if you have this here in Finland, but when I was a kid, I always saw this in Colombia, and I found this very interesting. This person who created this artificial being as embodied as a little kid and took him with him in his family and raised him, If you think in retrospect, there's a very interesting question here about, creating living beings, interacting with humans, learning to be human, as we already saw in the original definition. We need to interact with the environment. And then the famous movie, AI, I remember the idea is interesting, but the main character, or at least from the movie, what I remember the most is this character by Jude Law, who was this called Pleasure Robot. So that, as you see, this idea of having robots that can, provide pleasure to certain people, or as companions, or as sexual companions. This is also a very interesting idea to discuss in the world of AI, or embodied AI, and more recently, Alex Garland movie Ex Machina. So the arts always have been, both literature and cinema, being aware of their capabilities and discussing topics about AI. But I would like to start with where the original idea sparked. The original idea of the possibility of creating a real AI was by Alan Turing and less known Alonzo Church, the idea of computability. The idea that we are able to create machines that can perform tasks that can overpass the human being. And almost simultaneously, Konrad Zuse created the first programmable computer, the S3. And then we have Mockley and Eckert, who created the ENIAC in the US, or Fred Williams and Tom Kilburn, who created the famous Manchester Baby, the first programmable computer that even Alan Turing went to, work with this computer, and they opened up to create machines or computers that were able to be acquired publicly. Let's put it like that. These ideas of this electronic computer make us think to the scientific community where intelligence lies. So in the brain or in the mind. there were these two schools of thoughts, and actually, as a curiosity, the origin of the word artificial intelligence started in this year, in August of 56. At that time, Marvin Minsky organized a conference, or a summer project, as he called, and he named it the Project of Artificial Intelligence, or the Summer Research Project. And it was the origin, or they coined the term. And as you see, well, a little bit male-centric origin. I mean, unfortunately, I can't change history. But in this picture, you have the leaders of the main laboratories in AI that started all this revolution. You know, Marvin Minsky started the AI lab in Stanford. Claude Shannon was working at Bell Labs at the time. Hervé Simon, Alan Newell, they opened the AI laboratory in Carnegie Mellon University. So all these ideas start to flourish, but focuses in the concept of mind. Almost simultaneously, there were some scientists who wanted to work in the idea that intelligence lies in the brain. And then McCulloch and Pitts, they were the first to model the human brain using mathematical networks, as they call it. And then we have the first computer who was built by Rosenblatt and Whitman, called the Mark I perceptor machine. It was basically a big machine who was able to identify symbols and was ordered by the US Army. So despite all these advances and discussion, during many years, it was the concept of mind, the one who was the more important. But then in the last 20 years, the concept of brain has started to rise and be the dominant perspective about artificial intelligence. Why the brain? Because these neural networks started to become more complex networks in a term that we call deep learning. And then these deep learning networks are become so good that they even have been able to overpass human capabilities in many aspects, machine translation, computer vision, etc. But why these deep learning networks are so powerful? Because we have these three components mainly. One, we have a huge volume of labeled data. So we have access to a lot of digital data that companies can use to train these models. Like many of you now with your phones, you know, you are generating this data and sending to them. They can train models even more intelligent. We are also more novel and more efficient algorithms. We have frameworks that we can train these models. It's not anymore people in very, deep labs, universities. Now we can train those models even in your own laptops. And the third element is the computational facilities. We have access to very powerful and devoted computational facilities for training this model. For instance, this is a picture of Lumi, the third more powerful supercomputer in the world, who is hosted in Kajaani, here in Finland. And actually, I went there. So I took a picture of myself and I put it there because I'm really proud. So, yes. Other elements that basically sparked this revolution is a lot of funding, public and private, and the fear of missing out, because we are in an era that we call the Industry 4.0, and nobody wants to lose the train, so they want to jump in and start to work in these fields. But now let's address the elephant in the room. So there are these models called generative artificial intelligence models, who are basically more complex architectures based on these networks that people start to develop in the 50s. And then for a long time, most of those models were called discriminative models, where models who were able to distinguish between one element, one other element, etc. But then in 2013 and 2014, there was a switch, a new paradigm called generative models. So instead of being discriminative, they were able to generate new content. So the main guilty is this called variational autoencoder. I'm not going to explain these terms, but I just wanted to give you a timeline. And then a new element called generative adversarial network, or GAN. These networks were very complicated, very hard to train. They required a lot of computational power. But then in 2017, this famous transformer network. The name of the paper is amazing by the Google team. It's called Attention is All You Need. It's basically a new architecture that allows you to train this model easily and create these all amazing generative models. And when everybody saw the potential of these transformer networks, they started to create these new technologies. One, the generative pre-trained transformer, or GPT. So now you know what GPT stands for. Everybody has been using the word GPT, but nobody knows where this is coming from. And then OpenAI, the company, released the first model, GPT in 2018. But then later, they devised the potential and they start to train new models, in particular the GPT-2, with 1.5 billion parameters. This is the size of the network. So I just want to give you here for a context, because later they trained GPT-3 is 175 billion parameters. They realized these models are amazing for creating text, doing some arithmetics, etc. But scientists are really curious, so they also realized that they could generate other type of digital content. So they start to experiment with videos, with movies, with sound, and they created this amazing software called like DALL-E or Midjourney. And then we have in 2023 ChatGPT-4. That is a fully closed model. We don't know how many parameters, or we don't know how even it's trained. So now we are in the first issue that we don't know how these models works. Some of you probably know this image. The Teatro Spatial, who won this contest in this Colorado Fair, sparked a lot of attention. If generative images can be considered art, because it won this contest. So this is a question also for you. In general, these models are so easy to train nowadays that all fields of creative content are already touched by generative models. So you basically have to use, unfortunately, all these models are trained by big companies, so the only ones who have access to the models and the supercomputers to train. But then on top of that, people can create new applications. If they took this model that are generate text, they can create marketing notes, or if you use ChatGPT, you can write code by itself, or generate images for media advertising, etc., or synthesize voice. You have seen this already, I imagine, in many aspects, even 3D modeling and other areas of science like biology or chemistry. So as you see, this is relatively new discoveries, and the amount of technologies that have been developed around are booming. So now we have this called creativity apps in all fields, and it's impossible not to pay attention to this. And as you already are aware, so this is good that you are opening this discussion here. So let's talk about what are the main elements that we should discuss here. What is the science of generative AI? I found this interesting paper during my research that basically established that, generative AI systems increasingly have the capability to produce high-quality artistic media, visual art, concept, fiction, literature, video. This is originally a video that was generated, but it's a PDF, so we cannot put it here. And maybe some of you remember this painting, Edmond de Bellamy, who was sold by Christie's in $400,000 some years ago. So what is the impact of generative AI? Well, we need to discuss several points. I think I already listened to you, and it's very interesting that we need to think about new ways of understand perception and the conceptualization of this, what is the generative AI. There must be some shift in culture and aesthetics. So now is your turn to rethink in these shifts. In particular, the legal dimensions of authorship. Most of these models are trained with data that is copyrighted, or when we train the models, we own the model or we own the work. It's a discussion that is open. The labor economics, maybe to generate these 3D animations, you don't need anymore, a full studio, just one person perhaps with a very powerful supercomputer. The impact on media ecosystem, now these models are able to generate fake content that can impact society heavily. So it's also important. And others like inequality, training these models is not for every society. Colonialism, bringing biasing data to other, the global South countries. Pollution or contamination. I recently learned that GPT 3.5 model requires basically a whole supercomputer running for 1 month in order to be trained. So this is a huge amount of energy that needs to be used. So as a conclusion, creativity is reimagined, so maybe many sectors of society, and understanding the impact of generative AI requires new interdisciplinary scientific inquiry into culture, economics, law, algorithms, and the interaction of technology and creativity. So thanks for your attention. I hope the talk was or sparked some ideas and discussions in the coming days. Thank you.
You have been listening to the podcast of ENCATC, the European Network on Cultural Management and Policy. To learn more about us, our activities, and how to become a member, visit encact.org.